There we go. Okay, so as she said, my name's Peter Birdsong. I've worked with Georgia Crown Distributing Company. We're based in McDonough, Georgia, which is just south of Atlanta. That is me. Unfortunately, they maybe put my picture up there. I have not gotten any prettier, so sorry. To give you all a little background on myself, so I actually came from sales. I worked with sales. I was on-premise sales with Georgia Crown for roughly about 6 years. I've been the sales analyst for the company for about 6 years, so I've been with the company 12 to 13 years total. So not only do I do some analytics, but I also analyze our sales force, and I try to come up with ways of going to business and for our sales force to be a little more efficient in the field. So a lot of this has to do with data-driven information, and some has to do with just programming, but a lot of it has to do with what we do with Dimensional Insight. So they've been a great asset for us. Thank you. So we're going to get, try that again. What are you doing? All right, so we're going to get into a little bit of the unknown. We're going to talk about how we had to kind of do a quick response into that, how we adapted using ProDiver. I'm going to show some of the tools that we kind of developed over time and over the, I guess, the first 6 months really to try to help us get through the pandemic, while we're still using the same tools today. And then if we have some time at the end, then we'll get into some questions. So about Georgia Crown, so we're a family-owned company. We're on our 4th generation of leadership, founded in 1938. They were actually originated in Columbus, Georgia. So they were actually the first family after Prohibition to unload the first legal liquor carload. So they have a little Georgia history on their side. So we do have operations in Georgia, Alabama, and Tennessee. If you're not familiar with the laws in each state, in Alabama it's a control state, so we only do wine and beer in Alabama. Georgia, we do all 3 commodities, so we have wine, liquor, and beer. And then Tennessee, we actually do 3 separate markets in Tennessee. We have Memphis, Nashville, and Chattanooga. Chattanooga, we have beer. We dabble a little bit into in spirits. Memphis, we have a little bit of all 3, but mainly it's spirits and wine there. And then Nashville, a lot is wine, and then we have some spirits there and a little bit of beer. And then, like I said before, we're located in McDonough. And the reason why McDonough, a lot of people wonder why we're so far south of Atlanta, because we service all of Georgia and all of our deliveries come out of one warehouse. It actually makes it a whole lot easier for us to get down to the southern part of the state, eastern part of the state, so it becomes a centralized location for us. So facing the unknown. So, COVID hit. And just like everybody in this room, nobody knew what was going on. We didn't know what was going to be called essential. We didn't know if we were going to be shut down, how long we were going to be shut down. Were we going to be able to come back to the office? Were we going to be able to get deliveries? Were we going to be able to get stuff from our suppliers? There were so many questions that we had out there, and we didn't know where to go. And then all of a sudden, we were told that we were going to be deemed essential, and that we were going to be able to still service customers. Okay, well that's great, but then we still didn't know how customers were going to respond. What was the consumer going to do? What were our package stores going to do? What were the grocery stores going to do? So there were so many questions out there in the immediate that we did not know how to answer. And then once we kind of got some answers to that, and the answer that we got was not at all what we were expecting, things just went through the roof in terms of sales. So now it became, well, can we keep up? Because now we're going to have supply issues, we're going to have supply chain issues, we're going to have driver issues. So how are we going to keep up with it, or can we keep up? And then how can we even predict what's going to happen in the future? So we try to use a lot of the tools that we use within ProDiver, manipulating some of the data and using our data for us to try to help with some of those answers. Now, there was never going to be a 100% guarantee on any of the answers, but at least it helped us kind of drive our business a little bit as we got into it. So, like I say, we had the right analytics, so ProDiver became huge for us, but first thing we had to kind of look at was what were the questions that we needed answering. Well, first and foremost was inventory. We needed some sort of inventory analysis. We needed to figure out, okay, how much do we need, how long can we keep it, how long is it going to stay in the warehouse, when can we get it. We needed some sort of trend for what was happening with sales, what was happening in different markets, what was happening over a short amount of time versus a longer amount of time. So we had to have some comparative data. Our open POs, it got to a point where we just basically just started ordering from our suppliers and just throwing blanket orders out there just because we just wanted to get products in our door and get it in our warehouse. So we needed something to kind of help us keep up with that. I realized I'm about to step off this thing. So we had to have some way to help us organize our POs. And I got to say, our pricing and procurement department, they were fantastic for this thing because if it weren't for that team and being able to help us stay organized, I have no idea where we'd even be right now. And then reservations is a little something that we kind of did that's, I don't want to say it was unique to us, but maybe it was unique in the way we were using it. But it got to a point we were having to allocate and reserve certain products that you would think are just core items. Crown Royal, Jameson, Patron. We had to kind of keep that bottled up, and we were only allowing certain amounts to go out to certain areas of the market so that we could stay flush or at least stay a little blanketed, and it wasn't just all going to one place, and we weren't just going to big box stores and stuff like that. So we developed a reservation system that we'll get into a little bit later, and we had to use Diver to help us out with that too, because reservations actually came from our ERP system, but not everybody, like sales didn't have access to it. Only certain managers had access to it, and I was the only one in the company that actually ran the reservation system. So there's no way I was going to be able to give every individual a report every day. So we ended up using Diver to our advantage for that. So, and we'll get into that in a little bit. So inventory analysis. So I'm going to admit to you right now, like I told you, I came from sales. I did not do anything with coding. So Alan Walker, who's here as well, is one of my coworkers. He's head of our IT. And so he's kind of the back-end brains behind what we get to see. So we were able to develop a lot of things in the background with Diver that our trade marketing team that's responsible for our ordering, up to procurement, up to sales. We were able to get all these analytical fields here to let us know how many days we had on hand. So we were able to put something in the background that showed what our run rate was versus the inventory that we had so that we knew how much we had on hand. When was it time to order? So being able to take all that and let us know, okay, in terms of regular turnaround time, we need to order by this date. We want to make sure that we can keep stuff in. Didn't guarantee that we were going to get it in, but we at least knew about what time we had to start ordering. Frozen stock again. That's kind of where the reservation system came in, because anything that we reserved, we didn't necessarily want our customer to know that we had it in stock, because then they were just going to try to order everything. So anything that we reserved, we took out of active inventory and we put it into frozen inventory, so it looked like we may have been out of stock, even though we really weren't. And then you can kind of see some of the fields up here. It kind of gave us some forecasting. It kind of gave us a little bit of the run rate that we were doing. What were the trends? Days on hand that included orders. So there was a lot of different avenues that we could go with inventory analysis. And this right here was huge for us in terms of being able to better judge where we were going with our inventory as it was just flying out of the door. So this was a huge, huge help for us. Again, just kind of go into a little deeper detail as to some of the fields that we used more often than not. The days on hand, like I told you, so the number was constantly evolving. It was changing a lot because it was updated daily. But it still helped us get a good average as to where we were going to stand in some of our core items. The days to order, we talked about how much to order. So we actually had a part of our analysis was, okay, if we wanted to keep 60 days on hand, 45 days on hand, 30 days on hand, we were able to kind of get all that calculated on the back end for us, so that our trade marketing team had the fields and they had the knowledge as to how much they should order, whether it be a truckload, 2 truckloads, half a truckload, whatever it was, so that we knew how much we needed to keep on hand. And then the inventory needs based on what we have, we can determine if we will be covered for the next 2 months. I mean, that was kind of the standard. If we couldn't get at least 2 months to start, especially with the way COVID started, we weren't even sure if it was worth getting in at that point because we had so many other needs. And then trend reports. So to kind of go along with inventory analysis, well, then we wanted to take the trends. We wanted to kind of go a step further. And we wanted to kind of get some comparative data to look at cases this year versus last year, and then a 3-month time, the last 3 months versus the previous 3 months. And then we wanted to do 6 months versus the last 6 months. And 9 months, 9 months, 12 months. So it really kind of gave us a different snapshot. And I know this looks all jumbled and convoluted, but it really gave us a better snapshot when we put this in a report view for trade marketing and for procurement as to what things were really taking off and what things were dropping off under a short amount of time, what seemed to have some longevity to it, and that's where kind of the latter dates came into play. And you would find some really interesting things that would happen where Crown Royal may have shot up the roof at the beginning, but then if you look at it over a long period of time, well, it leveled off pretty quick. And it was the same with the trunk. Even though they're poor items, everybody kind of did those big buy-ins. Like I'm sure everybody was having the same issue that's in the industry. You get these big buy-ins, but then all of a sudden it would level off. Well, without the trend reports, we couldn't really see that in a grand scope or a big picture. So we were able to develop this, and doing this in the report view of Pro Diver, it actually is diveable as well. Now, a lot of people actually didn't realize that within the company. And then even in report view, you can dive down on these things. So, and this was also great. Microphone. This was also great for our supplier network as well. Our suppliers really liked to see this kind of information that they told us that they had never seen before. So it helped them out as well when we were trying to order things, and they were wondering why we were ordering so much or so little. We'd be able to show them why. So then we needed something that needed to be functional in Diver. So that's what we did. That's kind of what I was talking about. So even though it was in a report view, we were able to take everything and we could do it by commodity. We could do it down to what type of product was it. We could do it by brand. We could do it just by strict item, by size. So there was all different ways that we could knock this down and share with our supplier network and share with procurement to make sure that we were ordering accurate and to make sure that we weren't keeping too much on hand of one thing. Well, if we don't need as much of this, well, we know we need a ton of crowns, so let's use that extra space to keep the extra crown. So it was just a very, very key report for us as we were moving through this. Open POs, again, ordering just kind of blindly and just as many orders as we had out there. Alan, again, helped me out to get a purchase order report that we had in Diver so that we could do this by brand, we could do it by supplier, we could do it any which way we wanted. And because our warehouse was responsible for the appointments, and there was only really one way at the time that you had to dig into our ERP to find the appointments. And so we were able to extract that information and put it into Diver to make it very quick and easy for everybody to go look at. So now, sales was really the big culprit here. Sales had no earthly idea when things were coming in. So this gave an avenue for sales to be able to see exactly when things were due, to hit the warehouse, and they had better ideas of when things were going to be back in inventory. So this was a huge report for us that we actually still use to this day. Driver shortages became a big thing too with, even though we had dates sometimes, they still wouldn't show up. And it's just something that we had to deal with. And receiving became more difficult, but this gave everybody a clean line of sight. And so this was a huge report for us that we built. Reservations. So this became kind of a complex thing for us. One of the examples that, you can see some of the examples over here between Bullet Bourbon and Don Julio. So essentially, we knew that there were certain things that we just weren't going to be able to get a lot of from our supplier. They weren't able to keep up with the run rates. They were trying to service the entire country with what they had on hand. So we knew that we were only going to be able to get certain amounts. Well, as long as we knew what we were getting in, well, then I was going to be able to take that, use a percent of business model that I created in Diver, and be able to say, okay, so our eastern region uses 25% of Don Julio, so out of the shipment that we're getting in, they're going to get 25%. And I'm going to reserve that down to a supervisor level. I'm going to break it down by supervisor so that, Tate Parker is going to get 46 cases for his team to use. Steve Skeen, based on his percentage of business, he got 6 cases to use, so on and so forth. So I was able to assign that directly in our ERP system to the supervisor level, and anybody on that team would be able to pull from that inventory. But they didn't have a line of sight to that. So we had to create a Diver model for managers to be able to come in and see exactly how much they had left on hand, because all of this was taken out of available inventory. So this was a great tool for them that they were able to come in every day and see exactly what they had to work with on a daily basis and what they could sell. And things flew off the shelf so much that this is just a little snippet. At one time, I think we had, I want to say it was 126 items on a reservation system. And unfortunately, I was the only one that was inputting all that stuff. So, you can imagine trying to keep up with that many items. It was almost impossible for sales. So that was why it was imperative that we came up with something for them to use in Diver. So, what's next for us? We need to improve our analysis of inventory and sales to identify market trends. So that's something we're continually trying to evolve on. I hate to say coming out of it. I mean, that's such a weird term to say because COVID's still out there. But as things seem to try to get back to normal a little bit in the markets, well, we do see trends, are starting to come back. I don't want to say back to where they were before. I don't know if it's ever going to be at that point. But we know it's not going to be like it was when it first started. We were using the term video game numbers at one point because it just seemed like it was so inflated, and we knew it wasn't sustainable. So we have to be very conscious that things are going to start to level off and may even drop a little bit. So we need to adjust the way that we're analyzing our business and analyzing our inventory, analyzing pricing, market trends, things like that, to make sure that we're continually adapting to what may change moving forward. As inventory becomes more available, suppliers are going to be assigning more goals. One thing that we ended up having to get away from a little bit was supplier programs. That's a big part of our business sometimes with our sales reps because they look to be incentivized on sales and pods and KPIs and everything else that was going on. Well, they're starting to get their inventory back. They know that they're shipping us inventory. They know that things are getting back to being open. So now they want programs to be back. They want their KPIs back. We're actually starting to get tasked with numbers in terms of accounts sold and things like that from 3 years ago, from pre-COVID. So they're wanting pre-COVID account sold numbers. And that's what we're getting compared to. So now we're having to go back and we're having to start goaling again to our sales reps. And that kind of leads to tracking pods better. Another tool that Dimensional Insight has in Program Advisor is really helping us out with that. So we're able to take our diver data and put it into Program Advisor and help our sales reps be able to start tracking pods a whole lot better. I hear clapping. Am I out of time? Okay. Lord, talk faster, Peter. All right. So we're having to track pods better. Program Advisor is helping us with that, and Diver also helps us with that. We're going to start comparing. Like I said a couple of bullet points ago, we're starting to compare pre-COVID numbers to today's numbers, because even though volume may have been up, it doesn't necessarily mean that our accounts sold in pods and KPIs were where they were, because we didn't have the number of accounts that were still open. But now that that's getting back to normal, we're having to get back to that level. Reassigning territories, we're using Diver to help us with that, because we have to get our accounts to become, now that they're becoming open and available, we got to start reassigning territories a little bit, because I can't have an on-premise rep with 150 customers. And that's what it was getting to at one point. So now we're having to, we got to be smarter with the way that we're assigning customers to our sales reps. And then inside versus outside sales, that really helps us there too. We have an inside sales team that helps us with e-commerce orders and telephone orders and things like that. So we need to make sure that we're putting the right customers on inside versus the right customers on outside as everything starts to open back up as well. So we're using a lot of data for that. So as we get back to full time, we're still using all the same stuff that I just showed you. It's things that I think we're probably going to be using from now on, just because they're that powerful for us. I don't think it matters what's going on in our industry now. These are just tools that are everyday things for us. All of these things that I'm showing you are things that we use daily. So they become valuable assets for our everyday business. Look, business it's not really slowing down. I mean, it may level off a little bit, but it's hard to say it's going to slow down. Everybody wants to drink. I think one of the best stories I heard when we started this whole thing was we were trying to figure out why our sales were going up so much. And so we had a supervisor go into a package store, talk to one of the owners, and he said, yeah, we had some of our regular customers were coming in, and they'd order 2 weeks worth of booze. And then we see them 5 days later, and they were ordering 2 more weeks of booze. So I think people were it was a time for them to just let loose a little bit. So as business evolves, we need to evolve with it. And so that's pretty much all I have. So.